Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, welcome to Vespers. If we haven't met, my name's Carl Baker. I serve as the college pastor here, and I'm really, really glad to see all of you, see some new faces, see some people that are here every week. We're really grateful for all of you. We are in the midst of a series called Forgotten Voices. We've been doing this all semester long. And we actually are doing this series in tandem with the high school ministry. So Chris and Emma, they do our high school ministry, and they've been doing the same series, the same topics each week, which has been really fun to do. And so I actually talked this message at high school, and it was super nerve-wracking. Like, high schoolers, I have no clue what to do with, and it was super nerve-wracking. I'm so glad to see all these familiar faces. I'm like, oh, it's my people. So I'm really, really glad to be here. But let's recap a little bit. We have an art piece for each week, and so I just want to point these out to say, where have we been? So on the far right, we did Cain and Abel, the Abel story, and looked at how the death of Abel points to the death of Jesus, and Jesus' death is a little bit better. We talked about Hagar, how she was sent out into the wilderness, but God saw her, God heard her. Larry Locke came and talked about David's family and the messiness and the brokenness of families, and how God cares about your family even though it's messy and broken, and the church can be your family as well. We did Rahab, who was Rahab the prostitute, but that she was more than a prostitute. She was a deliverer, she was a prophet, she was so much more than the label that we give her. Austin came and talked about Jephthah's daughter, which is that piece in the middle, and this really tragic story of us using people for our own self-importance. Using people for our own self-importance, this father that killed his own daughter, a super tragic story in the book of Judges. And then before spring break, Maddie Rahr came and talked about how Jesus interacted with women in the Gospels, how he interacted with all sorts of marginalized people in the Gospels, and particularly this widow who gave her little bit that she had, but she was really being devoured by the powers that be. So that's kind of where we've been. We've went through the Old Testament, talked about all these stories, and now we're here in the New Testament looking at another story in the Gospels. And tonight we're going to talk about someone that saw all these really important moments in Jesus' life, someone named Mary Magdalene. So she is this person found throughout all the Gospels. She's mentioned in all four Gospels, so she's really important, and she has seen these really important moments. Her name's Magdalene because she's from the town of Magdala, really creative name. That's a town located not far from where Jesus grew up. And so what else do we know about her life? Noah read for us from Luke 8, and I'm going to read that again for us. It says, soon afterwards, Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. So he's healing people, he's doing all these marvelous things. And the 12 were with him. That's the disciples we know, the 12 disciples. They were with him, as well as some women who had been cured of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called the Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward Chuza, and Susanna, and many others, and many, many more, who provided for them out of the resources. So, right in the middle of Jesus' ministry, he's going around healing and bringing the good news of the gospel to the whole nation, to the whole countryside. He's doing all these things, and it says the 12 were with him, so that, again, that's his disciples. That's kind of classically what we know is the 12 disciples, the 12 men that followed Jesus around. They were his insiders, they were his entourage. They kind of followed him wherever he went. But did you know that Jesus didn't just have male disciples? I'll let you say amen. Jesus' followers and disciples also included women. It also included this band of women that followed him around. It wasn't just this boys' club. It was a group of men and women that followed Jesus. And it lists them for us. It says Mary called Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Susanna, and many, many others. Jesus created this incredible movement that was taking over the countryside, taking over the nation, and he created space for everyone to follow him. Not just men, but men and women. This incredible movement is taking storm across the land, and men and women are following Jesus. This idea of following is really, really important. People follow Jesus for a reason. Maybe they wanted to see a show, but most times people were following because he was actually doing things. He was actually changing the fabric of their life. He was actually doing spectacular things that people wanted to be around. He created a culture they wanted to be a part of. He created a movement, and people said, I want to emulate his life, so I'm going to follow him. So the first question for tonight is, who do you follow? Who do you follow? Who do you spend time around? These people spent their time following Jesus all around the land, men and women, but who do you follow? Many of us use social media, and we literally follow people on Instagram or Twitter. We follow them in all these ways. That's the term that's used. I follow a bunch of people. Maybe you follow me at Carl J. Baker. It'd be great for the follow now. But no, in many ways we follow people because we want to build ideas. We want to build a brand. We want to say what to wear. We want to build connections. We want to build this life. And so we gain ideas. And sometimes, though, it does force us to be a little jealous, a little self-conscious, a little reserved about who we are, a little uncertain. So the people we're around create a culture. The people we follow create a culture. Your roommates, your friends, your family, the people you follow, the people you want to be like, the people you look up to. They create a culture. They create all these things. And so Mary Magdalene is following Jesus. She says, that's who I'm going to follow. That's who I want to be like. The question is why? Why does Mary Magdalene follow Jesus? And again, there in that Luke passage, it talks about how Jesus cast evil spirits and infirmities out of these people, and Mary Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out of. Mary Magdalene followed Jesus because she found healing in Jesus. She found healing. She found hope. She wasn't just following Jesus because she saw him healing other people. No, she said, he healed me. It wasn't just that she saw him do this incredible thing for her neighbor. No, Jesus came and healed her soul, her body. Now, I've never witnessed a demon being cast out of someone, let alone 7 demons cast out of someone. That had to be quite a transformation. That had to be quite crazy. 7 demons cast out from her. That's wild. There was literal death and vengeance and destruction and all these things raging inside of her. And when she experiences Jesus, she is breathed upon new life. She's breathed upon a fresh breath, and fresh air came upon her. In the presence of Jesus, Mary Magdalene was healed. So the question then is, how have you been healed? How have you been healed? Have you experienced some sort of deliverance in your life? Has there been trouble and destruction and heartache and pain in your life? Have you found freedom? Are the people that you're following breathing life, or are they breathing death? Have you found freedom? How have you been healed? And I know many of your stories. I know marriages in this room that are being mended. I know of relationships that are being healed. I know of restoration and hope and plans and excitement. I know your joys. I know your sorrows. I'm thankful to know these things, but I know that there's messy, broken, hope-filled, hopeless, all sorts of things in this room. I know places that you found healing. And that's what the church should be. That's what I want this space to be for you guys, a place where we're honest about our brokenness, where we bring our mess with us into this space, and that's okay because we believe there's healing to be found. We believe that when we encounter Jesus, we find healing, and we mourn that there's trouble in our midst, but when we come together, we following Jesus, we know that all things can be made new. All things can be made new. So where have you found healing in your life? Just like Mary Magdalene. And likewise, when we experience healing in our life, Mary Magdalene did, she was called to action. And verse 3 tells about how these many, many women provided for Jesus out of their resources. These women were the reason that Jesus and the 12 others had resources. Without these women, without Mary Magdalene, I think these dudes would have been really hungry and very homeless. It is only because of the resources of the many, many women that were around this group that these guys were able to do anything, that they were able to travel around. So these women were so moved by what happened in their life that they gave financially, they gave of their resources, they gave of their time, they gave of their energy. So the question is, how are you providing for others? How are you providing for others? How is your life part of someone else's life? How are you using your resources for the good of your community, for the good of your neighbor? So we don't just wonder who we're following or what healing we've experienced, but then we turn and say, this is what I want to provide to the community. And I look around this room and I see people that serve in our students, that serve in Vista Kids, that do things in our community, that love your neighbors really, really well. I'm really proud. I'm proud of this community and the way you provide for your friends. I know this week we have Family Promise here in our building. We heard about that before spring break, and I know some of you are going to come and spend the night here and be part of people's lives that are trying to work towards having a sustainable household, sustainable home. You guys give of your time really, really well. And I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for doing that and being a great example to our church. And I know that you can feel limited in college season. I know this time of life, it's like, I don't have that many resources. I don't have much time. I got to study. I got all this stuff to do. But I do know that there's things you can do, and you do too. And I see you trying. I want to thank you for trying, for doing what you can, for providing for your family, for your friends, for your church. And so you may be saying, okay, this is all great. I follow Jesus. I provide for my friends. I experience healing. But sometimes it still doesn't quite seem to work. Sometimes life is really that complicated, and it's just not that simple, Carl. That's all great. I can do all those things, but there's still brokenness around me. I still am frustrated deep down. I experience these moments of deliverance, but I still don't quite get there. And so I think Mary knows what you're talking about. I think she resonates with that. She was following Jesus. She said, this is the guy I'm kind of hitching my wagon to. He's going to take me to wherever we're going, I'm with him. And then she watches Jesus die. John 19 says, meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. Jesus was her hero, her deliverer, her champion, her leader, and then he died. Let's don't rush past this moment and move past the cross. Mary watched her leader die. Mary had experienced the miracle of having demons removed from her, and she was saying, I'm going to stick with him. There's going to be another miracle to come. I'm holding out hope. She's ready for another miracle to happen. But then Jesus died. She follows the beaten Jesus all the way to the cross. All those other 12 great disciples that we all know, they are long gone. And Mary's holding on to hope and follows all the way to the cross, waiting for the miracle to happen. But Jesus still dies. I think it's hard for us to fully grasp the disappointment that Mary had in that moment. The heartbreak, the tragic experience she had. And I don't know if you've ever been in a room when someone dies. But it's pretty horrible. When I was entering my last year of college, my father passed away from a bout with colon cancer. And I remember the excitement of going through the year. Melanie and I had gotten engaged. I was planning for a wedding. I was excited about some leadership roles that I was in for that year, heading into my last year of college. And my father died. And now all those things happened. We went and got married, and I had a great year with a lot of things, but there was just a different air. It was like the lights were a little dimmer, the air was a little heavier around me. Things changed. Things changed for me after that, watching my father die. And it's really hard. It's part of my story. It's shaped who I am in many ways, to lose someone like that's so important in your life. And so I think in some ways that's what it's like. And maybe you know what I mean too. But I think it's something like that Mary was experiencing. Someone she looked up to, admired, spent her life trying to emulate, and now they're gone. And they're gone, and it changes things. So what are you mourning right now? What loss are you experiencing in your life? You've had your trouble. You've seen a divorce in your family, a death, a breakup, a failed test, a big financial loss, whatever it may be. You're mourning something. You've experienced that taste of death around you in some way. It's not just me. It's all of us. And these events create so much intense disappointment. And we can all think of times just like Mary where all hope seems lost. Where it just seems like all the joy and hope that can be found in the world is just ripped away and totally gone. And so where do we find Mary? And that weekend, after Jesus dies, she goes to his tomb early in the morning, and we pick up the story in John 20. So I'm going to read some of the narrative there in John 20. It says, early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb, and she saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They've taken the Lord out of the tomb. We don't know where they laid him." So then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb, and the two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. Hilarious addition to the Bible. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came in, busted in, following him, went to the tomb, and he saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in and saw and believed, for as yet they did not understand the scripture, though, that Jesus must raise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their home, but Mary stood outside weeping. Okay, so what happened? Mary goes to mourn, to remember. She goes to the graveside of Jesus, and she's gonna continue to reflect. She's gonna continue to mourn. Mourning's a slow process for all of us. But Jesus is not there. She's like, okay, what happened? Like, someone stole his body? Like, this is crazy. So she runs and gets the disciples, and they come, and they're looking around. Everyone's confused, and the disciples leave, but Mary stays. Once again, the disciples are running away, trying to figure it out, but Mary is just going to linger a little while longer. She remained, she stayed in she was willing to stay in the place of her loss. She was willing to cry a little bit. She was willing to be sad. She's willing to be not okay. I think that's what's so beautiful about Mary is she's willing to stay in the pain and not just run off like the rest of the people that are around her. So we ask the question, is all hope lost? And I think she's got to be wondering this, like, man, I watched him die, and now I can't even mourn properly because someone took his body away. I can't even pay my respects how I want to. And so we're in this moment, the dramatic moment is happening right now, and we're wondering, will Mary eventually have to just get up and walk away? Like, will you eventually have to just go on with your life and move past that hard thing, or what is going to happen next? Will life go on, or will something else happen? So we pick up there in verse 11. It says, as she wept, she bent over, and she looked into the tomb. She's looking again for hope, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" And supposing him to be a gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've laid him, and I will take him away. I will go see him myself. I will mourn properly." And Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned around and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabbi," which means teacher. It's this beautiful moment. They realize Jesus is alive. So Jesus said to her, "Don't hold on to me, because I've not yet ascended to the Father, but go on to my brothers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and to your Father, to my God and to your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I've seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. Mary lingers by the tomb a little longer, once again holding on to hope. That hope she'd experienced, she'd found healing. The hope she was hoping for when she saw Jesus die, she once again is holding on to hope. And Mary, the follower, the healed, the provider of Jesus, is now called by her name. And Jesus says, "Mary, it's me." Jesus calls out in your name. He calls out and says, "Mary." He says, "Your name." He calls us in our darkest place, when we're there mourning, when we're sad, when all hope seems lost. That's just when Jesus shows up on the scene. And I think it's really interesting. She thinks he's a gardener. She supposes him to be a gardener. And I think what they're trying to do there is it makes us think of Adam in the Garden of Eden, the very first gardener, the person that was supposed to be the gardener for the whole world, to take care of all of creation, to tend to the Garden of Eden. And Jesus says, "No, I'm the better gardener. I'm the better Adam. I'm the one that's really going to restore the whole world back to its original state." Jesus is the one that's going to bring life and flourishing into the world. And so Jesus then sends Mary out on a mission to go and tell the disciples that Jesus is risen. Jesus is alive. I spoke and saw Jesus. This is the first announcement of the risen Christ in the entire world. The first time we hear that Jesus is alive is right here in this moment. The very first time. I want to show you our art piece for this week. We'll put that up on the screen here. This was done by Crystal Armstrong. Her husband Joel is the drummer on Sundays, and she goes to our church. She does a lot of our graphics for us, and she did this beautiful, beautiful depiction of Mary running away from the empty tomb on the left to go and tell the world that Jesus is alive. To go and tell the world that Jesus is alive. It's this beautiful depiction of the brilliance and light of the message of Jesus. See, moments before in this picture, Mary is weeping in the grass, waiting for hope, waiting for something to change, wanting to just mourn. And now she's running away, a smile on her face, no tears to be seen, to go and tell the whole world that Jesus is alive. And see, all of us know that Jesus is alive. We've all heard this message, and it's all because of Mary. It all goes back to this moment of Mary telling the disciples. The testimony, the word of Mary Magdalene is the only reason that we know that Jesus is alive. She's the very first one to proclaim the gospel. She's this woman at the end of her rope who's lost all hope is now given the charge to go and tell the whole world about the gospel. And that light is going to spread and spread and spread and spread. But what's interesting is not everyone believed her. In Luke 24, it says, "Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and all the other women that went and told the apostles. But these words seemed to them like an idle tale, and they did not believe them." So Mary's been given this charge to go and tell the whole world, tell the disciples that Jesus is alive, and they're like, nah, that is not true. That's craziness. Like they're like, I do not believe you. Because the crazy thing, it was a scandalous thing by Jesus to have a woman tell the gospel for the very first time. It was this crazy notion that they're going to have a woman be the first person to tell the gospel, because in that time of the first century, like a woman's word didn't mean anything. Like it couldn't be used in court. It didn't hold up in any testimony. Like it was not to be believed. It wasn't a credible source of information. And Jesus says, that's who's going to be the first one to tell everyone that I'm alive. Is a woman lowly in her state. See, all these stories that we've talked about so far are, once again, God using the lowly and the least to speak truth to powerful people, to prestigious people, and say, no, God's doing something completely different here. God's reversing the whole power structure. God is changing the whole dynamic of the world. And so Mary and her fellow women go and proclaim the gospel, but they weren't believed. And I just want to say, we got to be better than that. Even still today, there can be an impetus to not believe women when they say things. And we can continue to do that, or we can break the cycle and say, no, we're going to believe women when they talk. We can be better than that. Let's not perpetuate these trends that harken back to the first century. We're going to continue to listen to all people, especially people in the margins. And so we've now been given this charge. Mary is the first one to tell the gospel to the whole world, to the apostles, and now we are the same people. That light that was coming from Mary, that the King is risen, is now our charge to tell. So how can we proclaim that Jesus is alive? That's the ultimate question for us as we go, is how can we proclaim that Jesus is alive to our friends? This is the Easter story. Cindy talked about Easter weekends coming up. We're going to have Good Friday and Easter Sunday service. This is about a month away. This is what we're preparing for, to celebrate, to announce to the whole world that Jesus is alive. And how do we proclaim that? Because to proclaim to our neighbors, to our friends, to our family that Jesus is alive is to welcome them into that healing, to welcome them into that new life, to welcome them into that hope. We're inviting people into the reality that death is defeated, and that changes everything. We're inviting people into this profound mystery, but really a beautiful thing that we believe to be true. We're inviting people to say that hope is not lost. Hope is not lost. No matter the depth of your pain or regret, hope isn't lost. No matter how people make you feel, no matter how much shame you have, hope is not lost. No matter if people don't believe you, like people didn't believe Mary Magdalene, hope is not lost. Hope is found outside an empty tomb in the first century, and it's continued on today. Hope is what we're going to celebrate this upcoming Easter. And while I know that things aren't going to be easy, and trouble still comes, and there's brokenness and tragedy in our lives, we hold on to hope. We hold on to hope, that hope is not lost. Hope is not lost. And so that's what we're going to proclaim. We're going to continue to hold on to that tightly, just like Mary did, and tell the whole world that hope is not lost. Pray with me. God of Mary Magdalene, we trust your gospel with the people in the margins. We listen to their voices. So tune our ears to hear, open our eyes to see. Let us not miss the proclamation that you are alive. Help us to hold on to hope even when the day seems dark. Jesus, you have conquered death. What else could we fear? So give us courage to continue to proclaim that you are alive. Give us courage to announce that true healing and life is found in you and you alone. Amen.